All right, I literally just like turned on the recording software, so we're live.
Oh, okay.
All right, this is going to be a socionics typing using Model A. The terminology and definitions will be reflective of that. At the end, potentially, will be a DCNH subtype system, which is Model G. I'm going to be asking a series of questions. I would like for you to answer them openly and honestly. Don't feel the need to feed me any sort of information or to show me specific sides. I just want you to give me your take or your understanding of the question. Um, Also, this is not me telling you your type, telling you what your type is. This is me giving you my suggestion on what I think you are. So use this terrible English, by the way. Use this as just another data point in crafting your own identity, for only you know yourself to the highest degree.
The way you pathetic sometimes.
Wait, it sound what?
uh, the way you speak sometimes is very pathetic. It's
Emphatic.
it sounds almost, no, prophetic, almost like prophetizing, you know, here, go to the world with this and do what you, or do what you will.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
I'm drawing heavily from that demonstrative NI. I definitely am because that's what NI base is. That's the person who gives you the quest, the person who sees the big picture and is gonna send you forth so you can fix the world before it crumbles. That's the NI base.
It's the minions. It's the minions. You got minions as an enemy. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay.
NI base needs its little SE minions that can carry out the prophecy. That's what it needs.
Oh, okay.
All right. Um. So first question: how do you respond to the emotions of others?
Okay. Forewarning with my always a gray person, so you're gonna get it depends a lot. Um, and it does because it depends for how ooh, it depends how I have relation with that person. So what my relationship is to that person. I mean like mother, father. A lot of those labels actually I don't value them a lot. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, mom can still be a bad person, but
Mm-hmm.
to me it depends on how, like I said, my relationship with the person. If the person someone that I've deemed not worthy of my emotions, I probably didn't care too much. I'm gonna be honest with you. But if it's someone that I know there's an innocence to their emotions, especially if um that's me. It's gonna impact me. So yeah, if this is like if we're talking about how do I handle people's emotions, like especially like conversation or something like that, I don't let it externally shown. But I'll kind of put it in my head as, oh, these are behaviors that this person probably does and will continue to do. I get extremely like I get extremely angry when people are necessarily mean to other people without having a proper reason, because I know that they're gonna continue doing that in the future to other people. So the
Mm-hmm.
concept of me seeing hurt, I don't. I care because they're getting hurt, but I also care because of the future people that that angry person will hurt. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That'll make me upset.
Okay.
Emotions though, yeah, emotions of others, fine. Um, I mostly mute sometimes on the inside, but yeah,
Okay. Well, that gives me a pretty good direction starting off.
that's good.
All right. Can you tell me about any reoccurring problems you've been having in your life?
Um, These are mostly open ends, right? So you want to know, you just want to know whatever I can think of.
Yes.
Um, any reoccurring. I'm in the middle, so that'll always be a problem. It ain't easy. Um, so there's always some problems that the military brings, just multiple problems. It's to my great benefit later on, but it just sucks now. Um, the other problems I could kind of talk about are familial issues, a lot of family issues. Mostly family tends to ignore uh, speaking on emotion, tends to ignore uh, like each other's state of being. Like they're if you have strong emotion about something, my family's not gonna necessarily place value on that, so they won't really care. Which has always been up to me that frustrates me. Um, always been a sensitive person, so they always meant to do something that like normal people. I have many people love me. People love because I don't try to hurt people in any way. At least that's how I think they think about me. But my family is they're so rigid and very strong personalities. Um, they tend to kind of go over that, not pay too much attention to it. So between the family, family, life, military, a lot of physical like things, wise, self esteem issues, depression, self esteem. Always really big things with me. Besides that, I'm not gonna say I have too many problems. Other things get to this will turn into a therapy session. We talk about all of them. So, um, yeah, I think for the baseline, hey, these are the big problems in my life. I think those are about the three two to things really affecting me at any given.
Okay. I'd hate to break up the flow of the conversation, but you were lagging a little bit. Would you mind like joining and leaving just like really quick and see if that fixes it?
Is it lagging again? It wasn't supposed to do that. Okay, give me a moment.
Yeah. Slight robot. All right, let's see if that fixes it. All right.
Um, yeah, it's just in Korea, so unfortunately we're gonna experience this every now and
Yeah. I'm just worried about that denigrating the quality of the recording.
then. um, okay. But you get most of the information there of what I was saying.
Yeah, yeah. As you were saying, if we go any deeper, we'll get into a therapy session. So I can imagine there's other things that you could speak about. But yeah, if that's as far as you want to go, we'll just leave it there.
Okay.
All right. Can you tell me about your hopes, dreams, and aspirations?
Oh, I want to be a millionaire. It's a dumb and such a dumb and surface level thing. But admittedly, now that I'm on the topic, yeah, being financially stable would be okay. I don't think it's like the precipice of what I want in the future. I just see a lot of potential with being rich and how I could enrich like my family's life and myself and other people around me. So um, that's always nice, right? I've always wanted to give back what the world's given back to me, which is a lot. I owe a lot to the world. Um, the other thing, aspirationally, I mentioned being in the military. I joined the military army. I'm in South Korea. Can't tell you the locations because you're recording, so sorry. Um, but I joined as for quite a few reasons. One of the big reasons was that my best friends. I have two best friends. My best friend. Um, they're twins. They're in the Marines, and I had met them somewhat fresh out of uh, being active duty Marines, and they uh, brothers. It's such an interesting observation, especially to see twins never really leave each other. They live together. They had kids almost at the same time. ridiculous. Um, but their lives are so like parallel. However, one of them, my best friend, has a rougher time getting around life. He doesn't have the job that his other has. He's severe. Seems to struggle more with kid. Um, Seems much more reliant on having someone else to sustain him or help him out with his thinking. Kind of just a person that needs an equal. And then his brother is extremely independent, very, forward moving, actionable type of person. So noticing these behaviors made me really care about the soldier. Right? I was 300 pounds, almost. I really wanted to lose weight, and one of the main motivations between these observations between the brothers and my passion. Once I discovered funny enough and stuff, it all came together at once. I thought, well, I need to lose weight. I join the military because I want to help soldiers. I want to be a psychiatrist one day. It took me a while to come down to the idea that I want to be a psychiatrist. So there's another aspiration. Um, and it all just connects with kind of my love for people, and the military was just a way of kind of encapsulating everything into one, gaining experience through a medical job title. My MOS, and if you know what an MOS is, it's a job titling for the military. I came in as a 68X. You can look it up online. Actually, these codes aren't like classified or anything. As 68 X-ray is a behavioral health technician. So you're basically an assistant psychologist, psychiatrist, usually the nurses in the mental and stuff like one of the
Hmm.
only psychological jobs that include warfare and intelligence training, um, solely based in medical. So I joined that. It was the only in one job. So I decided to join that. I could gain the experience, certifications, uh, general knowledge, all of it. So all kind of came down to one idea. I needed to lose weight. I want to do it for this reason. This is why I do it, and these are the reasons why. So,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, ending aspirations. I want to be, like I said, a multi-billionaire philanthropist. Mr. Beast. Oh my gosh, absolutely living my life right now. Gets to do so many fun things, just crazy, wild, psychotic things, but he gets to help people while doing it. Like that's awesome. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, jealousy there.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, I hope all that pans out for you. I mean, that's fantastic. I would think.
If I don't work on it and don't actually do the things that I need to get there, it won't happen. So I appreciate it. I think it will happen.
Okay.
Sure will here. Sure will.
Yeah. I can certainly respect the strength that it must take to be in the military and to be able to follow all those commands and structures that make you into this sort of pawn of like this bigger structure that needs you to function like a well-oiled machine so it can go out there and do its job, which is just incredibly, incredibly
There is
difficult.
th- I appreciate that. Sorry. Um uh it's interesting. There's a lot of power in being a pawn. As soon as you said being a pawn, actually, it's funny because I do see myself like that sometimes. At the very bottom, but you being a pawn, you're in the actionable environment. You're the one that is the face of the military, is the face of everything. You do the things that the higher ups never get to do. You know, so yeah, yeah.
Or the thing that the higher
I
ups has already done.
uh Military is weird. I don't know if you know this, but you can actually come in as a higher up. So like if you're a doctor or like a resident, you can come in or you're in charge of a company at that point. So you come in as a captain.
Oh,
So you already gain a lot of power coming in if you so have the knowledge to do so.
okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And yeah, most of those higher ups never even touch the lower ranks ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do. Well, that wouldn't make much sense to me. You would think that you would have to be part of the
They'd have to
lower
get the
ranks to.
experience.
Yeah.
Do you know what we all say that all the time? There's a reason. There's a big military. Hey, our officers, and why is that? Because half the time men with so much more privilege, so much more money, and much less experience than people that have been around for 10, 20 years, and then they're in charge of you.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Kind of bizarre.
yeah.
All right. I think this next question might be pretty interesting for you to answer. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on. You are elected the dictator of your home country for 6 months to solve its problems. What do you do?
Um, this is behavior, but first I have to prioritize what's wrong, and the main big bads in the room, right? Mm,
Hmm.
if we're giving like a parallel world to the United States, right? Um, I'd probably get rid of the big bads. Once and this is because it's going online. If it does, because I'm a military person, I cannot speak ill will of politicians, other things like that. Um, I did mention I have strong opinions, so I gotta be PC about what I do say, just so you know. But it's I think we've moved big bads, and I don't know any other way of saying that without fleshing it out and giving away too much. We I don't mean like kill them or anything, um, but certainly remove them of their titles. I think they're oh hello. I think there's titles, certain structural details we're probably have to get rid of, and that'd probably be my first month. And um, getting rid of unnecessary or positions that hold too much power over others. Probably be my first thing to do. Um, I can't imagine myself being a dictator that wouldn't want to fix problems before I no longer have authority to do so. So I and somewheres to structure things properly. Um, so I think removing big bads, and, unnecessary job titles, stuff like that, be first thing um, and then of course prioritizing whatever is the problem within that state, whatever hypothetical country we're in, um, whatever it is. If it's an agricultural problem, my people are dying, I have to find a solution. You can't. It's funny because it's like you can't just plant more crops and oh look, they're no longer starving. No, there's a whole system, a line of food and economy that ends up affecting how all that and shipping and all of it, that affects how people receive that food, which is usually what causes famines, stuff like that. It's never that you can't plant stuff, right? It's that you can't get it out to the necessary locations for people to benefit from it. So if it was an agriculture problem, there you go. They're a little thought out way of doing it. Um, think the next things I do, once if this is a short time for fixing all the world's problems, right? So um, I'd see what I could do. But if I had any residual time, any extra time, I'd probably know set about some traditions and things that people can remember the changing that happened, um, kind of in memory of hey, we made things better. Let's remember it this way, um, type of thing. So um, only if time to do so. I'm sure the people, if I was a good dictator and did what I promised, right? I'm sure the people would do that themselves, but I wouldn't mind being part of that establishment of traditions. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting thing that you said there that correlates very strongly to kind of a direction that I was thinking. So I certainly want to put a pin in that and try to remember that for the end.
Okay.
It was a bit of optimism. Very interesting. All right. We're going to move on. Do you tend to categorize the external world?
Kind of like what I was in how we prioritize value things. Is that how I understand the question?
Um, it's basically that you're compartmentalizing things on the basis of like characteristics. So that would kind of fit under that umbrella, right? So it's like things that you should prioritize because they are going to produce something effective within the society, and this kind of gives them that like urgent label that makes them alike with other things of that. So it's like the things that are important. So, is this important or not? Could kind of be a distinction that fits under this.
I think I might do it passively, but I think I did actually talk about earlier where if I do this with people. So if I determine that a person is unfit for emotions or anything like that, what I do mean by that as well is I don't see people being effective within this area. I don't see people providing proper assistance to the, if you will, quote unquote tribe, right? They don't they shouldn't be there, is what I'm saying. And probably get rid of them somehow. Again, murder never on my mind. That's not a thing I want to get rid of people by. I think they should be effectively moved from the situation, from wherever they're at. Sometimes that's just difficult because those types of people tend to weasel themselves in and bite down like a tick on a dog in those systems. Very hard to remove, people to remove because probably take a lot of good things with them. Um, so I do categorize, especially people, how good or bad they are. That is absolutely something I do. Um, I do. So I feel so evil saying that. I feel so wrong. I know I do it. Um, I suppose the other thing, right? The thing hearing whether or not I prioritize things, if I prioritize things in my environment that are important. I don't think I do. I think I have a hard time being materialistic as much as I want to. It's like, oh, let's watch. It's important because it costs money, like or pretty or something. Um, Ah, I know one way I'm materialistic, and it's for aesthetically pleasing things. Um, if I do have like a necklace or something, I don't know what it is. Watches always seem to be by extremely materialistic, but necklaces always have an expression of the self in them. Um, and stuff like that. That's beautiful. And I do somewhat a little prioritize that because as little as I like to talk about my internal self to people in the real world, like this kind of conversation never happened in the real world for me because I feel like people would see me as either arrogant or they might poke holes into my ideas and stuff, and I don't like people intruding on that. So
Ah,
um, kind of show that through like jewelry or like maybe my hairstyle, something something that'll show them and express myself without giving away too much. Can appreciate that. That is something that I do prioritize a lot, um, day to day as a means of showing that. Besides that, no, don't really categorize things. It's more or less people. If I'm gonna be honest with
okay. Very, yeah, yeah. You said a lot of interesting things. More things that I want to put pins in. Hopefully, I can remember them all.
you.
Man, I think I already forgot one of them. That's terrible. All right. Um. Okay. Um. I forgot that other question that I usually ask. I have no idea. I like, and this is like the second time where it's like I'm not pulling it. Um.
The dictator one?
No, I've already done that one. It's when I'm measuring one of the functions. Like I had another
Mm.
good question and I've completely lost it. This is why I need to write them down. I had most of my questions written down, but I managed to not have this element filled out. Oh well, we'll just move on.
It's okay. Yeah.
Would you consider yourself open to new ideas?
Oh, yes, and and it depends. So, um, wow, I I person that necessarily likes change. I do like things to have a structure with them because I don't appreciate like when my changed or if I do make plans, you don't show up. Uh, hmm. Can you say one more time? I'm sorry, my brain was going on a rant on the inside. Can you ask the question one more time?
Funny. Um,
Yeah,
relatable.
I sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah. I was asking, are you open to new ideas?
new ideas. So not always, but if the idea is something that benefits you, it it's gonna make things more efficient. If it's gonna if it benefit multiple people, I don't like situations where an idea can benefit multiple people, but it makes another person maybe miss out or lose. Um, Sometimes if the idea is it's unfortunately a means to, yeah, uh, sometimes you gotta, you know, drop some eggs on the floor. Um, so yeah, I think if idea doesn't stomp on the general mood, the and people, that I think it's completely fine. Yeah.
Okay. Man, that was a really complex answer. I can see like a lot of different elements that would be pertinent to what you just said there.
Yeah.
All right. Do you like to travel?
I love travel. I don't like the car rides and planes because I me sitting and just kind of contemplating has always been one of the things in my life I try to stray away from because I do it too often. Um, so I can get very, I don't know what it is, car rides, plane rides, stuff like that. It can make me very sentimental on the inside. It can make me like sit there and think about a lot of things, something I shouldn't be thinking about sometimes. So I don't like that aspect of traveling. However, um, destination, you know, when there was a lot of anticipation when you get to places. I don't, and this is really relatable on a humanistic standpoint, but the I no longer feel the anticipation of getting somewheres because I know I'll get the somewheres, right? Um, but once there, albeit like hiking or something, like I love hiking. I love seeing those things, um, and it's like a fair, like a state fair is super exciting to travel to. And once there, the atmosphere is sometimes things like that can be intoxicating for me. Like if I were hiking to a mountain, I'm gonna bring up hiking because I really like it. But just seeing the beautiful trees, the foliage, something you get to see in the city, right? Like yeah, trees and there's foliage, but it's not. For some reason, it never feels in the city like it's part of what it's supposed to be. So, like in the wild, right? You always got trees that grow on trees and out and this and that, and those are like safety hazards and people will cut them down, but they have a natural beauty to them, right? That you like you won't find in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Doing those events, seeing those things, like like I said, circuses. I don't know, so whatever it is we're talking about in terms of traveling, experiencing um things that other people have gotten to experience you so much about how beautiful and going there and finally saying, yeah, wow, they were right, gorgeous. This was the right thing to do, and go and explore is always um, that's always something I love so much.
Okay. Do you ever make decisions off the basis of the affect of those around you. Examples of this can include body language, tone of voice, or facial expression.
Uh, I think I've talked about that more too. Almost solely, all my decisions are based on the reactions of other people, how 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 and when they act, and if I should. I always try to think internally, should I even act on it? Is it something that I need to just observe and put into my little filing system in my brain? This is what they did, or is it something that needs immediate action? And um, to learn. I say this a lot. I had to learn to take action when those situations did arise. You see someone rather sad or something. Um, I used to I used to just put it in my brain, oh, they're sad, and then go away. And now that I'm older and frankly I'm an adult and I have that authority, attempt to act upon the situation. For the most part, I do. I see a lot of people don't do that in their life. And those are the people that be extremely lost in this world, that never take action upon the things that they think internally. So I for a very long time have worked um, and chosen to act upon things that I think internally based on those reactions of people. Yeah.
Excellent. That clarified so much for me. Okay. Do you ever intentionally change the emotions of others for an outcome or goal?
um, we had talked about this previously before the session.
Yes.
Manipulation. It's a
Uh,
word that, yeah, I know. It's a word that to me has a lot of negative connotation. Well, not to me, sorry. To many people, it has negative connotation. But to me, um, in base root of what the word means, it just means to create movement, to do something.
yes.
And I do think we all manipulate each other, whether we intend to negatively or positively. My thing is that I I try to, move people's ideas around, or how their perspective on how they think sometimes, by first connecting them, right? Telling them through my words, not directly to them, oh, I'm a good person. No one's gonna believe that. You have to have conversation. You have to build that rapport, um, and then once you build that rapport, you sense that they're willing to hear you out and willing to learn from you, right? Then you can give an. So do I do it? I think I almost actively do it all the time, and that's just who I am. I think I think it's just the way I see things, that some people have skewed perceptions. And I'm not saying they're. I'm saying they're skewed. Like they're internally debating whether or not something's the right thing to do, and I look there and try to figure it out for them, or try to work with them and figure it out for themselves. Right. So yes, yes. I want it to sound bad. To me, it sounds really bad. Do you actively do that? But yeah, I do. I do.
Honestly, sometimes I'm beginning to believe in Galenko's charges. But then again, I also find them to be perhaps a bit misleading and misguiding. But sometimes they seem to be there. Oh
Right.
man. All right. Oh man, big yawn. Okay. Um, how do you process your own emotions?
Feel like I inadvertently answer all these just because of how much I have to kind of break apart questions. Not very well. um, Not very well. Um, I mentioned earlier that I'm quite mute on the inside, and it's because my environment really affects the way I am. Um, and to me, what that ends up happening, and I've kind of like observed it on myself, right? I've kind of had to like pretend like I was a person looking at me, right? And I had I've learned that I don't. I'm doing it right now. I'm not sure if you're like catching this in real time, but it's difficult for me to explain my own internal emotion, understand
Mm-hmm.
what it is that I necessarily feel about a situation. I think I always have to think about a situation before I actually give any emotion to it or any thought. Um, I mean recently with the help of therapy and stuff, I've learned to cry at things that make me upset because for this time I didn't, and I still don't find the need to show or feel those emotions rather than kind of think about the emotions rather than feeling them. Once again, the world kind of will manipulate the way I kind of process my internal self. I do require a lot of information for that reason. I do. So they're not my type and ideas are good or not. Um, yeah, I would end up with a friend that's like, oh yeah, oh wow, that's the nicest thing, most beautiful thing anyone's ever said about me or this and that. I appreciate hearing those comments because it means that that person needed it, and then makes me happy 'cause they're happy. But otherwise, when I'm alone, um, it would take something very strong for me to feel anything. It's because of the nature of that. Usually, only sadness and anger tend to be things that make me feel anything when I'm alone, at least. So,
Okay.
yeah,
We're definitely heading in the right direction here.
I joked about this. I know we're kind of done with the question, but just actually a little snippet here. Um, I always seen both the way I kind of see people is like their base emotional state. I always thought that I was quite a somber. I find some good happiness in the sad things. So yeah, that's me on the inside. Put it down to anything.
Okay. All right. Well, just remembered one of my questions. How do you form your moral values?
Oh, I think it's that we all learn them from outside sources. Uh, a lot of a lot of psychology professors I look at, obvious one Jordan B. Peterson. Um, you, you know, I think in a lot of my experience with the world, I think a lot of it has to do with my experience in the world. I've seen uh, and how that affects the around that situation to be where my morals come from. You know, I see on the news this drunk person killed this five, um, survived. More, my conclusion there is going to be, okay, you know, this obviously hurt and depressed and reckless person committed a stupid atrocity. Morally speaking, yeah, that's bad. That's horrible. But the morality I get from that, the idea that spurts from me is what what was that what was that driver? What was that drunk driver thinking? You know, why what if this person who severely probably and again drunk conclusions, I don't know the whole story. This was a real life thing that happened. A news article I saw. If this person um what got to that point, and if they hadn't needed to feel like that, the situation of the death of those many never happened. Uh, Controversial topic on that. Hitler. uh, Obviously very depressed, sad guy because hey, art thing didn't go very well. Caused a lot of pain to the world, and pain then resonated in waves across the world. So you know, it's kind of how I view the situations. My morality ends up coming from looking at all the, of a situation and then determining where it goes. In that sense, it'll be ambiguous. It'll be ambiguous and gray no matter what. 'Cause rarely are situations just bad, or really, really, right? Like a murder kills someone. Why did he kill? Uh, he just wanted to. It felt good to him. Yeah, that's obviously terrible, bad. Like, no, we don't kill. Killing for killing is bad. Killing because you know, like some dude, kid, another true situation, right? That's morally ambiguous. Well, some people say, oh, it's okay. They killed a rapist of someone in the world. He did the right thing, but it's still murder, right? So once again, great topic, but this is by basis.
Hmm.
How I look at it. Yeah.
I like that you don't pass judgment on it and you just say that it's a gray area rather than a bad or a good.
You can do that, and I do that. Like in conversation, when people stay away from the moral ambiguity and they start assigning label morals, I'm just like, nope, it's good or bad, and that's I see it. Because otherwise, they're just never gonna get it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
All right. Very interesting. How do you handle conflict with others?
You assume that I have conflict. uh, I hate it. I hate it. The repercussions of it. However, I know it's very necessary sometimes. If there's someone that I don't particularly get along with because I see that they're a good person, right? Um, of course, I'm gonna I'm gonna push against their ideals or something, and I know either they're gonna end up agreeing with it or they're gonna go away. um, I'm not physical. Never touched a person in my life, believe it or not. I know that's crazy to hear from a military member. Believe it or not, we're not fist fight each other all the time. Um, definitely done some sparring fun. I kick people's butts very well, apparently. Uh, never hit a person that wasn't willing to like spar or something. Never punched a person. Period. So yeah. Conflict. One of those things I tend to try to don't like. Ooh, did I disconnect there?
Um, I don't know really what happened.
You,
Me neither.
did you hear my final result there? What I said?
Yeah, that you don't really fight with others and that you don't like to, and that everybody that you've ever had physical conflict with had your permission. Or you had their
Yeah,
permission.
yeah. I'll at the end because it cut off like right at the end. And I don't I I just simply don't do physical conflict. I don't like to, but um sometimes conflict is necessary. That's what I.
Okay. All right. Is it easy for you to relax?
No. Oh no. Um, yeah, going back and for like the third time, the conversation I was having to you about the whole airplane and the traveling thing. I don't like sitting too long because then I kind of start thinking about things all the time. I can never do that. Relaxing is not something that comes easy to me. I actually have to take medication because for me to kind of sit in my bed and try to not to have a single thought or at least 5 minutes of my thoughts off isn't an easy thing for me to do. And this one, I have an easy answer. No, I just don't. I'm gone on vacations and I stressing all the time. So
Okay. Do you ever hesitate or proceed with caution?
Um, yeah, yeah. There are some instances where I have to take a leap of faith. Uh, joining the military was a leap of because you never know what the results are going to be coming out of it. Um, but I know it's something I absolutely had to do because if not, I wouldn't achieve the results that I wanted. Um, if I there's instances like that. However, for the most part, I'm probably going to plan out before I do anything. You know, every big decision in my life had months, or if not copious amount of research done into it before I make that. And yeah, I when I was a kid, I really wanted the computer, so all my research leading into that, I spent 6 months designing and developing the computer for myself for the price cost and what was the best and absolute best parts for the pricing, all that, and I built like a $900 computer that took me, I think, 7, 8 years before way, and it was still top of the line.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be so. I did a very good vision with my research on that one on the computer. That was fun. If you never built a computer, it's you to do it part by part. Actually,
Okay. Yeah, I've heard
yeah.
that before. I heard you should never buy, you should always build.
It's the mere experience of doing it, and every single day that you go turn that thing on, so much pride because you're like, yeah, better than $1,500, mega desktop thing that you paid so much for, and it's like, yeah, I don't know, it's exciting, it's cool to do.
Okay. All right. Is your room clean?
Um, that's a difficult question. I certainly be clean. Before anyone comes over ever, it's spotless. But throughout the week, no, it's quite a mess. Um, just if I don't have me time, like actually this typing session is a me time thing. Um, playing video game, in that sense, relaxing, doing something active, having to strain myself with real problems in the moment, very nice. So I kind of tend to neglect those things. It's pretty important to get it done. Like I said, especially when people go over. My room is, I promise you, my room is a clean thing. Um, People are over. Otherwise, it's a train wreck. Yeah.
Okay. All right. How do you manage time?
Uh, Stupidly well. It's actually one of those things I focus on in my life. Um, I I've just always been really good at timing things, like scarily good at timing things. Uh, I if be somewhere's at a certain time, then I'll manage, how long my shower will take, how long it'll take to brush my teeth, shave, um, do absolutely anything before the thing that I need to go do. Um, like if I want to play, I know like oh I want to fit in like a game or something, and games usually last so and so long. Um, Before I go to the event, I'll give myself ample time for the instance that the game will take longer than expected. I also have to give myself other time to do everything else. So I manage time very well, very on point. I'm usually the first one to like everything. It gets so annoying. At least if I'm there first, I have to kind of get prepared for that. And I mean, because I'm gonna end up having to talk to people, do things, can kind of conserve energy before I'm there to do it. Um, in the military, we're very like supposed to be really good with time. Believe it or not, a lot of people end up like that. Um, but for me, I find it difficult keeping with those plot points of time because the military is so like quick and like, oh, you need to be here this time, and they'll tell you 30 minutes before you got to be there, and you got to be there. So sometimes that angers me because I always planned out like a schedule I make every single day about what I need to do before I go and do it. So very well, but if you're in the middle, it screws up my plans.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Would you consider yourself good at predicting the future?
Um, no. Um, I think I am good at seeing the way things play out. I certainly am good at that. Um, but I think the future, it can be quite uncertain, and you can only kind of either you can manipulate your environment to make the outcome what it is that will happen if that's what you so choose to. But for the most part, yeah, I can guess around time something will happen or when things will happen. Yeah, I ooh, that question is difficult for me to answer. 'Cause in some nuances of the idea, yeah, I'm good at some aspects of that idea that you just said. Can you tell the future? Yes. On other, I'm not God, so I'm not like a fortune teller. Um, for me, it's to predict exactly how the future will happen. You can sort of think about how it will happen, yeah, or how it will play out. You know.
Okay. Well, I think I have a hunch on what your subtype might be.
That's fantastic. I'm actually really that.
Okay. All right. How do you take criticism?
Uh, not very. This is one of the things that can. It's definitely of mine, and this is one of the few things that can be quite. It can be one of the only actually genuinely feelings. Like I don't really get my feelings hurt by anything. Um, but criticism. I think because I work so hard, uh, for on myself to have good qualities of myself, that when something is critiqued, um, it feels more like a attack. Because I feel like some people in this world don't try to work on themselves and simply they be themselves. I'm not for the idea that you should judge yourself. I like it. It's a beautiful message. You should be yourself, but I think you could always work on yourself. So when someone criticizes me, to me it's almost like an insult of you're not trying harder. And then when I compare myself to other people, it's like they're not doing that. I like them more, you know? So like how can these people who don't try as hard to be better for themselves and everyone around them and you how appreciate them more than me who's someone who's trying. That's always how I'm viewing criticism is that two line statement there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. When making decisions, do you ever think of what will come out of it?
I think I've established that actually pretty well. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, anything pretty much planned out, and I've figured what the outcome will be, right? Makes things a little more efficient, makes me be able to put the coin in my purse, if you will, right? On the situation. I think moments where that's interrupted or outcome that cannot be foretold by anyone, um, those situations tend to freak me out. So yeah, answer yes. Yeah.
Okay. Simple enough. Alright, I'm trying to think about everything. Did I hit everything?
Hope so. I know there's so I know it's so much things out of my mouth, so I'm sorry. There and to
No, it's
rant a
okay.
little with these ideas, these questions. Very deep questions. I appreciate that actually. You know, kind of get to see my perspective on things.
Yep, that's the purpose. That's it's so the person can maybe get a better look at themselves. So I can learn a little bit more about humanity. It's all a big test, and I think an experiment, and I think that's what makes it so joyful, is that people enjoy talking about themselves, and I think that typings are just a big excuse to let that person ramble for about an hour. You know what I mean?
I absolutely see it like that, and I'm okay with that. Like, and as you said, I feel like as humans, we don't get to do that, so we're not created for everything we're worth. In so, yeah, you're right. These little experiment. I just agree with everything you're doing. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's really how I'd handle it. I love the idea of being able to get this information, these perspective people, and at the same time giving them the gift of being able to express themselves. Um, it's very awesome. I think it's very awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate that. I think we've actually concluded the question portion of the typing session, and I believe we can move on to the results.
Awesome. I agree. Yeah.
I'm going to start by describing a few of the Reinin dichotomies. I know I don't even talk about the Jungian dichotomies, which is like the entire foundation of like MBTI itself, which is hilarious. Um, but
Yeah.
I'm going to describe a few of the Reinin dichotomies. Then we're going to get into the quadra, see where you landed in comparison to others. And then at the end, we're going to go through the elements and their blockings. So we're going to start first with rational versus irrational. So with rational types, these are people who are judging function base. So that's their number one. Um, these are going to be people who are going to be rigid. They're going to see things from basically they're going to see their decisions through, and they don't change their mind a lot. They're going to be more rigid in presentation and like behavior and such. Where irrational types are going to be more wait and see, more perceptive, and they're going to be more fluid in their presentation and their manner. I think that you are irrational. Mostly, you are describing things that are kind of irritating as being very situational. I think also that you have a very good understanding of how situations are playing out, and you're very in tune with that. Is one of the things that I'm kind of seeing. I think that might have something to do with your subtype as well. That you're very much in like a state of flowing rather than a state of rigidity, and that with the way that you rationalize things, I think that you're more alternating or more fluid because there's not as much buildup as you kind of swing from the base to the suggestive. It's more you're kind of alternating with the elements in the middle. Um, and I know that that's probably going to be something that somebody's going to be like, oh, that sounds like OPS. Which is funny.
That what you just described exactly. I add with like words with like describing things. Period. But what you just said is very true. Like if a situation requires to just be, matter of fact with it, I absolutely will. And it catches people times. But when a situation requires nuance and thinking, like actual genuine sit there and think about it, yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna be able to around that. I love doing that actually. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think that you're definitely in a state of flow. I don't see you getting bound up on a lot of things, which is something you can find with rational types. Rational types can overdo things at times because they're so severe and the way that they deconstruct things. Um, Now we're going to move on to process versus results. With result types, these are going to be people who are going to say, "Well, of course we got had the correct process because we got the correct result." There are people who are going to skip around within the chapter. There are people who are by any means necessary. They're not necessarily people that are going to be extremely thorough in their application of things, and thus are going to be less focused and more about just getting it done. Um, and then you have the process types, on the other hand, that are, well, of course we got the right result because we followed the right process. They're going to be very thorough in their understanding of things. So they're going to read completely like through the chapter. They're not going to skip over things. They're also going to understand like how to do things in its like entirety. So there's like more of a degree of specialization, you could say, because they are becoming more thorough. Excuse me, more thorough in their understanding of things. I definitely think that you are processed. The reason for that is like, when I was asking you the dictator question, you were basically like, okay, let's start with the output first. And so what are the big things that need to be done? So you're not like prattling on, maybe that's a negative connotation with that word. But with that the EII that we typed earlier, Lex or L3, where it's like you see him where he's where he's like, here's all these different things that could be done. So it's like, here's my thorough research on what it is. It's more like that you're talking about that it's like, okay, let's start with the major things. Well, let's start with these things that are like evident, things that stick out and stand out. So it's not like the thoroughness, it is let's get to the end. And especially, when I'm asking you some of the questions, especially the one related to TE and TI do not correlate with process or result. It's more the benefit ring thing. But it's like, do you ever think of the outcome of the output? Well, it's just like, yeah, absolutely. And that is kind of what you see with the result TE. Is the result TE is definitely by any means necessary, because it's like, it's not so much about me like learning about the object, but the application of the object, and so we're just focusing on the application. And so I can see a lot of the fixation on the application, regardless of it necessarily being about the ethics or the logic. That's what you're kind of focused on, is the output of it, and it's also something that makes it kind of nebulous for you to figure out some other things.
I was gonna say, because it's impossible to say it will work. You have to know what you want, but you have to attempt to go for it, or do what you need. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
How you described it.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's correlated very much with TE. I would say, and not even necessarily just like process, but that's correlated very much with TE. That it's like, in order to understand, we have to have the data points out there, and that is actually something that I share in common as a TE user. Is that or TE valuer, I should say. That's more socionics like, but as the TE valuer, that I tend to be like, okay, well, we have to throw something out to see what it does. So I very much understand that before you can know anything about it. Where it's like TI is like asking the question. You know what I mean? It's like it's the hypothesis end, and the TE is kind of looking at the results. I know that Mobius, if you talk to him, he will rant about that for like 45 minutes about TE and how TI is dumb. It's really funny. It's entertaining. I love it. Um, I love angry rants.
I love Moby. He's
Yeah,
funny, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to static versus dynamic. So basically, what you're gonna see with dynamic types is that dynamic types are seeing things flowing from one stage to the next. It's like in continual processor change and is being continually updated. And they're also kind of focused on the thing that they're looking at. And they'll pull information that's relevant or specific to the thing that they're trying to do. Statics, on the other hand, are going to be people who are taking like this snapshot or this photograph of what they're looking at, and they're expounding as much as possible off of that information, off of that one frame, and then and they're kind of looking broadly to improve their understanding. And once their understanding has been improved, the thing is now changed. And so you'll see static types say that, oh, these two things are completely different, even if they're tied together by some concept. They describe them as different, where the dynamics say they're in a state of flux or flow. I believe that you are a static type, mostly because of how I'm kind of noticing the way that you're dealing with like your own emotions, or the way that you are like understanding situations. Like, you have like this conception of what it means to like understand emotions externally, even though that you have this really good aptitude for it. It's like that is this thing that is compartmentalized by my understanding of it. It is not. You understand that it can have that it can have like an output, and that you kind of need to focus on that output, but you're more focused along the lines of like understanding the principle behind it, rather than understanding the flow of it. And so it's like I'm seeing, especially with the emotions, that it's like, can I understand my emotions externally? Yes. But what I'm really focused on is having a good understanding of those emotions at a more fundamental level. And so it's like, it's like you have to recollect on them. They're not instantaneous. They're not just there. They're not emotions for the sake of emotions. The emotions are tied in to many other things, and then you have to understand the complexity of that. And that's the static thing, where it's like you're understanding the information personally, rather than the information as it relates to like its external positioning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to the quadra. I believe, much like your friend that we typed earlier this evening, I believe that you're Delta, and I believe that you are particularly Delta NF. And then, as I was saying with the Delta NFs, is that they're a little bit more willing to be the arbiter of the information, because they are, of course, static types, and so they have a personal relationship with the information. So I'm kind of seeing that, where it's like you have your understanding of how things should be in order to improve the world, and you're starting very much understanding it through the lens of TE. And then, of course, with that TE, I'm also seeing combined this thing that is where you see the TE blocked with the SI. I don't see this so much with the EIIs, but with the IEEs and the rest of Delta in general, more so, that they have an optimism about other people. And that's what it is you're talking about how people know what's best for themselves to some degree. And that is very much Delta. That is so Delta, because SI is very optimistic, and it's not cynical like I see. And so it's like you understand that other people have their own environments, their own situations, and then you have that relationship to those situations that you assume exists because of the NE as well. So you can kind of like apply that. And so that's kind of one of the things that I'm seeing in the quadra. And so it's not like it's not like betas where it's like it's the procedure that matters, and it's the procedure that people need to cooperate with. You're understanding that it's like people don't need to cooperate to be advanced. And that's what makes it Delta. That's where it's like not FETI, and then you're seeing the SI, and you're seeing the SI, and also FI as well, because it's the individualism, the compartmentalization of people, and it's where like FITE is more like a group of individuals cooperating for individuals cooperating to complete a task, instead of TEFE, which is people cooperating for this combined goal or interest, if that makes sense, right? It's not about the you're teaming up for the logic and not for the ethics, if that makes sense. Um, so I definitely see aristocratic though. When I'm asking you about how do you deal with other people's emotion, how do you deal with other people's emotions? I don't remember exactly precisely what you said. I think I'm drawing a really hard blank. But what the impression that I definitely got out of it is that I was like listening to it. I'm like, that is so aristocratic. Mostly because you were for one you were talking about like the personal nature of your relationship to those people. But I think we should probably talk about that more specifically the elements. But it definitely I could see the aristocrat immediately. The unifying of the ethics rather than the unifying of the logics. Um, so now we're gonna go ahead and move on. I know that was probably verbose. Did that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. It does. And I know. By the way, I should give. I know I say I'm very short with the agreeing or not. I want you to think because I don't want you to lose the flow because it's very insightful for me. But I am listening. You know.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. I always want to like reflect back on the person. I think it's my training as social work, and that I automatically want to do that. All right. So now we're gonna move on to the blockings and the elements contained within them. We're going to start with the super id. This is not the way it's listed in socionics, but I do it for a specific reason that I think makes it more compelling for the listener or the person getting the typing session done. So within the id blocking, did I say super id? I meant id. Within the id blocking, these are going to be strong but unvalued. So how that's basically going to play out is that these are going to be things that you're very capable of doing, but things that you are going to be more cynical or dismissive of, and that you're going to have things that you prioritize ahead of this. So this is one of the reasons why the id blocking are elements 7 and 8, and they're considered like least concern, and why they're called the id, which is the uninteresting aspects, the more fundamental, the less sophisticated, the less nuanced. So we're going to start with demonstrative, which is four-dimensional unvalued. Sorry. So with the demonstrative, this is going to be something that you're going to be a good representative of without being specific or being implicit with this element in specific. And so I believe that this one for you is FE. So it's like, can I understand people's emotions? And it's like, well, so what you're saying is that um, I can understand people's emotions, but I have to act upon it. It's not something automatic. I'm not inbound with the fabric of these emotions. I am myself separate, and then responding to the separation. So there's like the static in opposition to the dynamic. Also, you're saying. Oh, wait a second. Uh, what was it? I just had such a good idea of explaining it, and now I think I've lost it. But so it's like like you're talking about basically when you process your emotions, the emotions aren't coming out of you instantaneously. Fe is associated with emotions, emotions. Uh, More specifically, um, when it comes to socionics, and so it's like you're not understanding your emotions based off the situation, but personally detached away from them, and then it takes you time to understand what those emotions are. And so there's where it's like you're giving me good positive responses that you do alter the emotions of other people for specific reasons. So you have that flow state with the ethics that you can access quite easily. But there's other things in the way that you find more pressing and important, and that's why the FE is placed in demonstrative. We're going to move on to its what it's blocked with, which is the ignoring. So the ignoring is three-dimensional valued. The ignoring is a strong function that is not used much. It is something that the person is going to be capable of doing for short periods of time, but will ultimately get bored of, and then will go find other things more interesting to do. And it is also rigid in comparison to the demonstrative. So I believe that your ignoring is NI, I think it might be potentially boosted due to your subtype, but also I think that I'm seeing a really good example of of how TI is manifesting through you within the way that you respond to this one. Um, Ironically, so I believe that you're ignoring is NI, and so with ignoring NI, you're gonna find somebody who can see how things are going to, where they're going to lead, where they're going to end up. You can see them transferring through time, but you're going to see other other possibilities, other ways that such a situation can play out. So you might be a little bit hesitant to put your eggs in that basket or that specific manifestation. That there are many things that could come out of this, and it can't be necessarily the specific one that I'm backing. So you'll see kind of a dismissiveness of that ability to see the ends of what you're observing. But I do witness you saying that you're very good with like the fabric of time. You're very good at being able to observe the passing of that. And so I think that's a good example of like the resolution of this element being high. And I think it's also a good example of it also being potentially boosted. I mean, I'm not sure if this DCNH is correct or not, but we'll see. But mostly because the other one, which is like seeing, are you good at predicting the future, which is very strong correlated with NI. That you are not being very enthusiastic about it. I think that's a good example of like the positioning of TI, and I'll explain that later. Because that was the only element that I probed where I got two completely different answers from the questions that I had side by side. So we're going to now move on to the super ego blocking. So this is going to be weak and unvalued. These are going to be things that you're going to kind of criticize others for, or that you can be criticized for, because you're not really focused on these things. And so it's like, okay, well, that's kind of irrelevant. Like, that's not the point. You're kind of dismissive of it, or it can even be destructive in your use of these. So we're going to start with the role. And so the role is the mask. It is what you can kind of wear in like business applications, but it is not your home. It's not endemically who you are. The role tends to be used more than the ignoring, but it is noticeably weaker and will play out less in the personality. So I believe that your role is SE. So with SE role, you're going to find somebody who is going to be capable of leveraging themselves against other people, but they're going to do so with arguments more so. And that's definitely super ego SE in general, is where the person is like, I would rather use my words. And so you'll find there is an eagerness of SE role where the person can feel comfortable having disagreements with people. You might find disagreements is more natural than people who are SE polar, but are also people who are going to be like, I would rather talk my way out of things than to bulldoze my way out of things. I would rather not coerce others, but to talk to others. Especially with Alpha Quadra, when you find an ILE, the ILEs could talk their way out of negative situations in very fun and fantastical ways. So I think examples of your kind of role, your role SE, is that you're not like shying away so much from like disagreements and things. You're not very much like dependent upon the agreements with the person, and I think you're capable of making like decisive decisions about when people maybe aren't necessarily the most important to you. I think it's definitely relational ethics, which is FI. Also playing out and being visible and aware, but also it's the role is the mask, so you can find that being blocked with the relational ethics at times. So I think that's kind of like a good example of that, where you can kind of have maybe a slight amount of gamma quadra cynicism, but not really the full expression of it. I think I wouldn't necessarily describe it that way, but maybe that's, I don't know, I just did. Whatever, super ego TI, not being very specific. But I think that's kind of like a good example of the role, and so it's like you can see its use a little bit more visibly, even though it's just by and large, you just don't seem to like conflict. You don't seem to find it necessary, especially with like SE ego people, where it's like, it's just a fact of life. something we all need to be comfortable with. Don't shy away from it. And you kind of have somewhat of that mentality, but not completely or fully, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely agreed. Yeah, absolutely. As I told you previously, just reiterating as before, if a situation or I need to talk someone through something is necessary for me to kind of push into them, I'm not gonna completely shy away from it. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do it if I don't have to. So,
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to move on to the polar. And so the polar point of least resistance or vulnerable is basically the element that this person is not really going to use. They can understand a lot about this through the course of their life, but they're never really going to apply it because they're going to find other more interesting avenues of actually applying the information. It's something that is very, very wishy-washy, because the role is rigid in comparison to the polar. So you can see the role definitely being more rigid in its use. Polar is very watery, not very tangible or usable. I think that this one for you is TI, and so you'll see with role TI, people who are going to be very inconsistent, people who don't necessarily think things through, people who are going to be also maybe cynical of things that are a bit too. I think this is definitely more role TI. The person is more cynical about like systems or structures and might be like, okay, well those don't mean anything. But that's basically what you're going to find when you have the super ego TI. It's the structure of things you're going to be somewhat cynical of. I think that I'm basically seeing evidence of role TI, and so it's like when I'm asking you specific questions that pertain to different functions, you're giving me wildly different levels of response to the same element being questioned. I'm using element and function interchangeably here. But so I think that with the NI and especially with the TE, which we'll probably get into, that it's like you have just very different answers for the same questioning of the element. I think that's kind of something to do with inconsistency. I think the lack of rigidity that you kind of demonstrate, the flowingness that you're going to have is another example of the TI in this positioning. I definitely think that you're not making categorizations of things, but more so of people. I think that's a great example. So it's not the logic, it's not the objective things that you're worried about. It's the subjective things, the things that leave an impression, that are more nuanced, that tend to be more interesting to you when it comes to like the introverted the introverted wow, sorry, I'm like losing brain power here. But so it's like you're making categorizations about people rather than things, if that makes sense. So it's like the relational ethics. You're seeing how much you relate to those people rather than your ability to categorize or to like put things in certain boxes, which doesn't seem to be super good for you. Does that make sense?
yeah, it does make sense.
All right, excellent. Um, Now we're going to move on to the ego, which moving into the valued. The ego is strong valued. So these are going to be things that there's my super ego TI where I'm being like super like redundant and not very precise again. But so basically with the ego, these are what
No,
you
you're okay. You're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I mean, I just find it funny that sometimes I'm so imprecise with my words. I think it definitely is like my TI being like, whoops. But but so yeah, the ego is what you represent to the world. The ego is what people look at you for, like the role that you fulfill. These things. Um, so we're gonna start with the base, four-dimensional value. The base is what you cannot escape, what you always will be. I find that also in certain circumstances, which is pertinent in this typing session, that when you question people about their base function, they will actually be kind of cynical of it because they are so good at using this one that they can actually understand when it doesn't work I believe that your base, the inescapable part of yourself, I think is NE. And so the funny thing is like, are you open to new ideas? And this is the funny thing that I found more than once with any base people, is that they will tell me. They will tell me, and this is hilarious. They don't say this specifically, but this quote. Um, my mind is not so open that my brain can fall out. That is very any base of a statement. It's just kind of avant-garde and funny in the way that it's stated anyway. I think it's such a good example of it, that it's like, I am so open to other ideas that I recognize when ideas are bad. I am so open to other ideas I can recognize when something is truly novel. Those are very any base statements. I think that you are any base, mostly because you are very open-ended and you like to kind of travel and move. I think you don't like to be too internal or too insular. I think that you have this kind of desire to externalize yourself. I think that you see how things are related and interconnected. And so NE and the ego is often demonstrated by people who are not super precise in their understanding and conception and delineation of things. So it's like, when you're talking about morality, for example, you're saying that there's no one true moral understanding. And that is a great example of NE, that there's so many different options, there's so many different choices or circumstances that we can't nail it down, and so we have to have some degree of vagueness so what we say actually makes sense. And I think that especially NE and the ego, is going to be people who are going to be more accepting of things such as paradox and such. So I definitely think that you're any lead, especially with the fluidity and the openness and the lack of binding yourself up too much. Now we're going to move on. Now we're going to move on to the creative, which is three-dimensional valued, of course, blocked with the base. So with the creative, this is basically like the alternate hand to the dominant, constantly like reassessing and reorganizing the information coming down from the base, so it is more palatable and usable and all of these other things. This is going to be what you bring to the world, and so it's not your home, it's not where you live, but it's what you're bringing. It's the thing that you are skilled at and what you're basically externalizing, and especially for introverts, by the way. But I believe that your creative is FI, and so with creative FI, what you're going to expect is somebody who is going to see the relations between things, somebody who's going to see the way that people relate to certain to like certain objects. Especially you'll find them be good at assessing if people are good for each other. Like if things are important to them, all these other things. You'll find that this person is also going to be very willing to go up to bat for other people, to be kind of an advocate because they're identifying with the other person's emotions and they're externalizing their own emotional state. So it's like they're basically like, okay, well, here's how I would feel in this situation, so I understand why this person feels that way in this situation. I think examples of this, like of you having this relational ethics and its good positioning, is that when you're talking about things only matter to you, when you have some personal relationship to it, you're saying that family isn't like objectively good, and that you're saying that there's subjective interplays between different people of like family units, and so that they're not objective goods, but individuals with complex narratives and characteristics that can't be just turned into a one-size-fits-all. Very delta NF, by the way. Very, very delta NF. And especially with that added degree of cynicism, just not SE polar, I would say. Just isn't SE polar. But yeah, I'm definitely seeing a lot of FI, when you're talking about how you process your own emotions, you don't know what those emotions mean, that you sometimes need to separate yourself, or you sometimes need to have strategies that you go about to be able to process the emotions, because the emotions just don't pour out of you on the basis of the situation or circumstance, because this is not emotions, it's relational ethics. That's what the difference is between FI and FE. So definitely think that you're FI creative. So now we're going to move on to the brain is slowing down, experiencing lag time here. We're going to move on to the super id. These are your weak but valued. These are the things that you get better at, the things that the things that you grow into as you get further in your development cycle. We're going to start first with the mobilizing. So the mobilizing is it's two-dimensional valued. It is basically the social integration function. Instead of it being like the super ego, where that's going to determine automatically who you get along with, this is more your level of the development that is going to determine who you get along with. So it's more subjective than I would say like the super ego elements, the mobilizing, especially when it comes to like that social interplay. So the mobilizing is going to be the thing that you like to show off, but is also what you're not very good at, and it can sometimes be offensive to others. And so, with the lack of stability, you see with TI polar, you can see with TE mobilizing that they can be a bit pushy or prickly within certain specific situations or scenarios, but they also have like some degree of vulnerability to that from other people as well. So it's not TE in the ego where the person is going to be like that's why I ask criticism and not constructive criticism, because I want to see where their mind automatically takes criticism. And you can tell it's probably going to be lower dimensionality in TE if they're going to respond with that there's a degree of pain, or that they will go towards constructive criticism instead of just criticism in general. So I think that's I think I caught your low dimensionality TE in that net. Definitely for sure. I think that you are demonstrating that you use a lot of TE and you have enthusiasm behind your TE usage, which is very mobilizing. Where it's like you're talking about that, it's like, okay, well you have to. It's not a priori. You have to see the data to know what's going on. Especially with a lack of TI, or it's like the lack of hypothesis. So you're very much focusing on the data, and so especially the result of the data, and so you're that it's like, how do these things matter in the course of like these things that I'm trying to do actually coming out and manifesting in the real world? That's because it's dynamic logic. It's tying into. It's bound to the other states, and it is continuously updated. So you don't die on the hill of your logic. Maybe that's a very overt statement that I perhaps shouldn't make. But it's rigid for one, but it's also going to be something that is it's fluid. Ironically, does that make sense? That's a paradox. That's an NE paradox for you.
Well, yeah. In that sense, I'm paradoxical. Anyways, like everything about me is paradoxical. So yeah, I understand. Yeah, I do.
Okay, yeah. That it's like you respect and value this so much, but are you the best embodiment of it? No. So now we're going to move on to the suggestive. And so the suggestive is one-dimensional valued. It is the seeking. And so the mobilizing, this kind of neophyte, exuberant, rigid application. You have the suggestive, which is the fluid the fluid suggestible use. That's why it's called the suggestive. It's this, you seek, you look out for this. So this is going to be what you value when you see it externally. You're very much going to respect this. People who do this well are going to be very enthralling to you, and that you're not going to be really capable of producing this yourself, and that you're going to painstakingly kind of weave together your understanding of this element over time and become more balanced of it as you go into the future. I think your DCNH might boost this. So I think that much like your friend, the EII that we typed, you might have that more degree of balance in your subtype. Might. Keyword. We'll see how if you resonate or not. You might not. I'm not feeling it very strongly. Sometimes I say that the DCNH might not be applicable. So if the person fits really well into the framework of what the type is, then you don't really have a DCNH. And I think that's probably correct. So I believe that your suggestive is SI. So you're going to find with SI, like fear of missing out is one thing. So it's like when you're not there, it can kind of be like anxiety inducing. You could be like overly focused on like specific sources of information. This could be having a boom bust mentality on the way that you might clean or maintain things. Especially there's like there is an impetus for why you clean things. You're also not very relaxed or cohesively involved in like your sensory state. This is kind of something that you reject and have an anaphylaxis to because it's so low resolution. But it's also at the same time, when I'm prodding you about the SI, you're giving me good examples of like, like I do clean my room sometimes. I do like to have my shit together, especially when it involves other people within the circuit. You also find people who are valuing of SI. They can be very specific in the way that they talk about objects. So it's like the glass sitting on top of the desk, the coat in the closet. When they're talking about cleaning things, and that's especially what I found with your EII friend, where he was like talking about specific things sitting on top of his dresser. I'm like, yep, SI. Um, um, but yeah, I definitely think that you're showing good examples of that boom bust SI mentality, but you're also a little bit more integrated with your SI, I would say, in some respects. But of course, your other SI question about relaxation, you're like, what is relaxed? Like, bro, I have to take medication for that. And I find that with like the low dimensionality SI, is that people are often very sacrificing of their body, very not very cohesive with it. So it's like with SI polar or SI suggestive, the people can, donate your body to science or be in like a medical experiment or something. Because their sensory state isn't that like focused on or is that strong, even though it's valued. It's what you seek. So actually, people who could relax you, people who make you feel comfortable, people who make you feel okay to be yourself, those are going to be people who you might find important and people you might want to stick around for. Does all that seem pretty cohesive? Does that make sense?
A lot of it, I actually have my first, not disagreements, but not being able to relate, which is the whole talking about objects and stuff. Kind of sounds like you're describing sentimentality towards like objects and things. If there's an importance on them around my environment.
Oh well, I'm
Um,
I'm talking about like the relationship of the object in comparison to cleaning it up or seeing the aesthetics of the object. So it's not necessarily the sentimentality, which I would say is
okay.
probably more on like the judging rather than the perceiving, if that makes sense, right? So it's
Okay, so
it's
that clears it up a little more. It does. Because I was like, I'm like, if it's there, I kind of just if it's dirt, I clean it. I was gonna say I don't really have to, but mm, I don't really have to look into the how difficult is it gonna be to clean aspect. Um, to me, in my brain, it's all one task,
yeah.
just parts of the task. So
Yeah, I mean, see, that's exactly the thing about valued SI. So even in its weak positioning, uh, where you still are valuing the cleanliness of the object, the appearance, or aesthetics, as they say in socionics. I think appearances is a more accurate word. I think aesthetics is too complex, because of course beta and Fs are very artistic, and is art not aesthetics in a lot of ways? Yeah, I think it's more so
oh,
about appearances.
oh, completely. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Okay, now it makes so much more sense what you're saying when you say it like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
about the appearance of the object, and so you value it, and especially when you have suggestive sensory. One of the biggest patterns is that the people can ignore this for long periods of time, and then get into a routine of actually maintaining it. Doesn't matter if it's SE or SI. That's the ignorance of the environment for extended periods of time. It's definitely suggestive sensory.
Yeah. Okay. Because it's funny. It's funny because we're like the whole hiking thing. How I was describing to you, like literally the aesthetics of nature, the aesthetics of environment that I'm in, the way the environment makes me feel. So, I see the correlation of what you're talking about now.
Yeah, see, that's the NF side of aristocratic rather than the ST side of the aristocratic. It's talking about aesthetics. See, that's one of the things I disagree about socionics. One of the very few things. I just think that the term aesthetics is maybe perhaps a little bit inappropriate in its translation. And can you blame them? This is being translated from Slavic language. It can't be perfect. All right, so I think we're gonna go ahead and move on to the DCNH portion, I'm going to read off one of the DCNHs. If we don't settle on one by the end of this typing session, you can read through it yourself and tell me which one you correlate with the strongest. I don't think you have a super strong correlation to DCNH, but I also think that because of some of the things that you said, that there is a pattern that's worth exploring.
Okay, absolutely.
Prototype, writer or director of psychological comedies. All of Harmonizing IEE's time is spent pondering, trying to understand various phenomena. He remembers experiences before details. At the same time, he knows how to learn from his mistakes as lessons for the future. He is self-critical, but at the same time finds this criticism painful. Nevertheless, the world surrounding him is not seen so much as a drama, but rather like a comedy. He sometimes inherently feels like he has violated his integrity or disharmonized his internal world, and then tries to restore his integrity to be at peace with himself. He also is at risk of detaching his inner visions from reality. For him, this is a painful problem, given his dependency on the influx of impressions from the outside world. Harmonizing subtype is the most thoughtful amongst the other subtypes. Even though people do not immediately notice this, he often seems to be surrounded by frivolity. He has a craving for challenging tasks, especially confusing human situations. He spends a long time studying comprehensively, covering the possibilities. However, he's always not sure he can explain the language of logic. Does that make sense? Is any of that correlated?
A lot of it did make sense. Um, the whole viewing life as a comedy versus a drama. I don't know if to either of those perspectives because I see life as it is. If
Yes.
anything, like tragedy. Um, the whole thing about tragedies is it's got those snips of hope in it. But
Yeah.
no, that kind of definitely doesn't resonate. A lot of the last things you said did.
Well, see, one of the things that I kind of disagree with that is that I tend to think of lighthearted emotions as being more FE than FI. And so if you are going to be somebody who has valued FI, you're probably going to lean towards the dark a little bit more, I would definitely say. And so I also see that as being with NI as well, because NI is also looking about the part of things, the shadow, right? The subconscious elements and aspects, because NI is very subconscious, it's something that Jung said. So it's like, if you're looking at the subconscious elements, which is what the subtype is, it's in the NI-SI subtype, that it's like, wouldn't you be more aware of the darkness of reality? I mean, it'd make more sense if this was IEE harmonizing. So, see, I don't know if this correlates super well. Maybe perhaps we'll put a pin in this, and you can read the rest of them and tell me if any one of them correlates any better. So I think that the final typing for now is just going to be IEE, and then we might do DCNH later, if you wouldn't mind reading through it.
Oh, this is your answer, IE, right?
Yes, IEE. So NEFI.
NEFI. That's interesting. Um, First, and this is hard because of Oceanics, and I'm not quite Oceanics as it comes out, but uh, that's what ENFP,
Yes.
if I understand. Interesting. Uh, Dang. A lot of things you said are very true. It's first time I met anything but an introverted type. The typing besides ENTP, say. Um, Once again talking about MBTI, but um, yeah, that's intriguing. Because it's very interesting because a lot of the things you said are very, very true. A lot of the ways I think, just within all my years of doing it, it's kind of interesting to see that different perspective where what's very true. Unfortunately, it's like based on socionics because I can't logic to BTI too heavily, but there
Yes.
is correlation there.
There's
So
correlation, but maybe not necessarily direct understanding. And I think that's probably important to acknowledge as well. I just find that to be old news and overstated. But, it just really depends. Because it could be true in this situation, perhaps, that maybe there is a difference in translation that leads to a different result. But, um, yeah, the subtype that I did select for you is an ambiverted type, if that makes sense.
that can make sense. Yeah, it can. Um, oh yeah, yeah. I do definitely think I'm quite ambiverted in that sense because I always describe myself as an introvert who puts a lot of attention to what's the word? Yeah, being sociable, making sure that what I say and do isn't perceived as a negative.
Yes.
So
Within
yeah.
socionics, intuition is seen as subjective. I know that objective versus subjective in MBTI is introvert versus extrovert. I don't agree with that for many reasons. But so it's like when you find that subjectivity, so that person is more reflective on their internal state, and so you can find with some intuitive extroverts that there is a natural degree of introversion,
Okay.
especially NF, because that's double subjective. That's double internal, as Jack Oliver Aaron would say.
Okay. IE. Okay, interesting. I'd have to do some research on IE within sociotics. Once again, trying to remove MBTI and sociotics from each other. Kind of difficult when you don't have all the knowledge of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very interesting typing. I appreciate that. I really, really appreciate this whole session. Actually, I really do.
Well, you're welcome.
Uh,
If you want to
very
send
eye-opening.
me,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say if you want to send me one of your emails, I can send you the recording so you can watch it again if you'd like.
Yeah, yeah, sure, I can do that.
All right. Well, excellent. And also, I do have a tip jar, so it just depends on if you found the information valuable. Might throw a couple dollars my way so I can not starve.
No, yeah, no worry. I don't get paid yet, but I'll keep you in the back of my mind for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. So final typings, IEE. I think harmonizing is a good possibility. So, yep.
I still so recording done, right?